It's that time of the month again. It's time to talk about what I read in November. Hi guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name's Katie and I talk all things books, primarily crime and thriller, but I do occasionally branch out. And I'm going to talk to you about my November reads. So let's talk quickly about the stats. In fact, no. First, let's get the nonsense out of the way. I am on a mission to get to 1k before the end of 2026, so if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It would mean genuinely the world. I am putting so much effort into my YouTube now, and yeah, I'm really getting stuck into it, and I would love it if you could show me a little bit of support. On to the boring bit of the wrap up now, and I just want to quickly talk to you about the stats. So in November, I read 10 books, which is probably about average for me. I seem to really slow down at the end of this month, which is fine, lives. But yeah, so I think, let me think about this. I read 5 physical books. I read 2 audiobooks. I had an ARC in there and a couple of Kindle reads, I think. The stats will appear in an image. This is how much I actually take note. But yeah, that's the boring bit out of the way. There's the stats. Let's get into the books that I actually read. So starting strong, I picked up Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and this was an audiobook pick for me. And I rated it 4.25 stars. Now, I did not expect to enjoy the premise of this book as much as I did. So genre-wise, this is fantasy, and it follows 2 characters who work together as like correspondents and are fighting for like a promotion when the girl starts receiving letters through magic, and she's sending them through magic. So it's like magical realism, and basically she's sending them to who she thinks is a brother who has gone to fight a war, but actually she's sending them to this like nemesis at the paper, but she doesn't know. This starts a very different relationship for them. I did not expect this to go the way it did. I was really hooked on this book. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was such a good, enjoyable read. And yeah, it's made me want to pick up the next one. Now, I'm currently tackling my TBR, so I don't own the second one. I don't know if it's available in paperback yet. Feel free to let me know. But yeah, I didn't expect to enjoy this like I did, and I really, really enjoyed it. That I do want to pick up the next one. Now, the next one is available on BookBeats, which is where I listen to this one. It's not ad PR, it's just the service that I use, and I would recommend to anybody because I do really enjoy it. I did moan about it, I think, on a reading vlog not that long ago. The pricing at the moment has just increased, but I suppose that's inflation. But yeah, I would really recommend this one. I really, really enjoyed it, and I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is Murder in the Gallowgate by Danielle Sellers. Now, November was a rocky start for me, so I actually soft DNF'd this. So the first chapter was like 15 minutes long, and I thought, first chapter, setting the scene. The next chapter, 29 minutes. So I put it down. I was not in the mood for a long chaptered book. But I did pick this back up later in the month, and I did end up rating it 4 stars. Now, actually, I said I listened to 2 audio. That is a lie. This I actually opted to listen to in audio, and I listened to this one on Spotify as it wasn't available on BookBeats. This is book 1 in the Lola Harris series, and I was due, which you'll see later on in this video, to read book 6 as an arc, so I wanted to read the series first. Now, might come as no shock, this is the only book in the series by the arc that I've read. Because I didn't pick this up till later in the month, I didn't have time. The chapters were long. However, the premise of the book was really good. So this follows Lola Harris as basically there is several murders in the Gallowgate, and it's set around like an art gallery. And when this really influential person is found quite brutally murdered, it sparks a few questions about the reasons why he's been murdered, and then strange things continue to happen from there. I thought this was actually really fast-paced, considering. If you don't mind a long chapter, I think it's really enjoyable to read physically. I did prefer the audio, plus it was time-stamped, which I think it was obviously in the physical, but I really struggled to get on board with the long chapters. I just don't think I was in the mood for them at the beginning of the month, which I think is why my reading impacted the rest of the month, but you'll see why. But yeah, nonetheless, I would actually recommend it if you don't mind long chapters, or you can pick it up in audio. Next up is The House We Grew Up In by Lisa Jewell. Now, this is going to shock a few people, and I actually think it's not necessarily controversial, but I'm not going with the popular opinion, and I rated it 2 stars. This is not a book I would recommend. So this follows a very dysfunctional family, and it follows a timeline where we're in the present day. And then it kind of keeps going back to the childhood. So something does happen to this family several years ago. I'm not going to say what because it'll spoil it. And basically we just talk about that. I would not call this a thriller. It's loosely family drama, but I just don't see the thriller in it. And we don't know, like, I am almost waiting to see what this massive catastrophic thing that's happened to cause this family to break down. And it kind of happened at about 85%. And then that was it. The other thing, so I've just said to you that Murder in the Gallowgate, I didn't, what are the words? That I'd soft DNF'd it because of the long chapters. Well, I picked this one up because I thought Lisa Jewell, belting thriller author, I am a huge fan. This has 30 to 45 page chapters throughout the whole book. I didn't see the point in it, and quite frankly, I kind of took my bat and ball home a little bit and refused to DNF it because I'd just soft DNF Murder in the Gallowgate. So I was a bit kind of fuming, not gonna lie. So yeah, this got 2 stars because I finished it. But unfortunately, I would not recommend it. Yeah. I'm gutted, but yeah, not my favourite Lisa Jewell at all. Now, the next one I am super excited to talk to you about is I Am Death by Chris Carter. Now, fun fact for you all, I haven't actually rated a thriller book 5 stars this year. But I have now. So this was a 5-star rating. So this is book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Robert Hunter series, and by far my favourite. Some have come close to that 5-star rating more than you will believe. So this follows, basically, someone is going around murdering people. That's a Robert Hunter like series thing. But this is the note that keeps being left. And yeah, it follows Robert Hunter as he tries to figure out what's going on. Now, there is a major like character development in the previous book that happens in this one, and I was so angry at it. And then, yeah, I just couldn't put this one down. The thing about Chris Carter's books are his chapters are incredibly short, but also they're quite, not chunky, but for a thriller, I say 350 is about an average for a thriller. Some of his lead up to the 500-page mark, but you don't feel like you're reading a 500-page book. I read this quicker than I've read like a 250-page book recently. So yeah, if you haven't picked up the Robert Hunter series, you absolutely have to. I love this. This is my favourite book. I'm super excited I finally rated a thriller book 5 stars because I find it so hard to do. I don't even remember the last thriller I rated 5 stars. So yeah, absolute win for me, and it just made me so excited for November because I finally found a book, especially when you look back at the last 2 books that I just talked about physically. Yeah, it was very much needed. Now, I think that's just about where my TBR for November ends. So I didn't pick up anything else. So if you've seen my November TBR video and you're watching this going, well, I wanted to see what she rated the TM Logan book, I'm sorry. So the next book I want to talk to you about is When You Disappeared by John Marrs. Now, I rated this 3.25 stars. Now, I did not see the point in this, if I'm being completely honest with you. So this follows a man who disappears and his wife is literally left to pick up the pieces. They've got 2 kids. It now looks at it, I think 25-ish years on, and he just reappears. So he's not dead. That isn't spoiled, it is in the caption. And then we just try and find out what happened. Now, I quite frankly hated the male main character. I don't know, I can't explain it. So this was me trying to get through my John Marrs backlist. I think I've only got about 3 to go, 4 if you include his new release in January, which will be included by the time I get through his backlist. But yeah, it just didn't feel very thriller-esque for me. I was just kind of waiting for the end. There were moments where I was like, oh, this is picking up a little bit now. But then it died back down again. So it is kind of middle of the road for me. It's not his best work. I mean, I read it. This was the example I was giving. So this was actually a shorter book. But yet, on average, I read a 350-page book about 10% a sprint. So that's 20-25 minutes. I'm quite a fast reader. However, this one I felt I was doing 6 to 8% and it wasn't even a 300-page book apparently. So you can see how much slower I was reading the book because I wasn't immersed in it really. So yeah, unfortunately that really didn't hit the point for me, but enough to give me a 3.25. It's not terrible, but I think for the more slower paced thriller readers, I think that might be more the book for you. But for me, I think especially off the back of a Chris Carter, it wasn't really a book I was vibing with, unfortunately. Next up, it was finally time to pick up Murder in the Darnley Glen by Daniel Sellers. Now, this released November 27th, so this was an ARC copy, and it was ad PR for Joffrey Books and NetGalley, and obviously the author himself. I met the author in October, and I really enjoyed his Yorkshire killing series, so I was very intrigued to get into Lola Harris. You guys know how much I love a detective series. Now, I was a bit sceptical because it was book 6, however, I didn't notice, and I gave it 4.25 stars. Now, this is actually the last book in the series, and I can see why, but this was so much, like, it's hard to say better because it's only 0.25, but I didn't DNF it and I read it pretty quickly. I really enjoyed it. It was very different to the first book. You can definitely see that Daniel Sellers has developed as an author. I sort of started at the newer end of his books and I loved those too. I think he's developed his writing really, really well. This follows, basically, somebody is found murdered in Darnley Glen, and it is Lola Harris's job to find out what has happened. This sort of kind of is a backstory. She was a student at the university, and yeah, they tried to find out what's happened. This has like a side plot which I really enjoyed, and it was very fast paced despite the longer chapters. So these aren't as long as the first book, but still you were 15-minute chapters at times. But that being said, you didn't feel it. It was just quick and easy to follow, and I was shocked by the ending, and I definitely read this within a couple of days. So yeah, I am going to go back and try the rest of the series at some point. It's not on my radar for now. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, so I have time. But yeah, in the end, I did end up really enjoying it. It's buddy read time now, and I picked up Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. Now, funny little side story for this one. I didn't know if I was actually going to get it in time, so I requested it from a local library. I'm not a hardback girly. I've actually sold all my hardbacks now. And so I didn't really want to pick this up and purchase it until the paperback was available, but I selected it as the buddy read, so that was more for me. Because it's a new release, getting it out of the library was an absolute nightmare. So I only actually got this towards the end of November, but I read it within a couple of days. So this is Holly Jackson's debut adult thriller. I ended up rating it 4.25 stars. The reason I did was because there was a few plot holes for me. I'm not going to say what those plot holes are because I think it spoils the book. But this follows Jet, who basically is attacked in her own home. She wakes up in hospital but is told that due to the attack she's going to die in 7 days. The surgery is pretty much 10% chance of survival, so she doesn't bother. She then has 7 days to find out who has murdered her, because they have murdered her, it's just going to take 7 days. So yeah, and the big shock for me in all of this was at the end of the book I cried. And I was on live when it happened. So this does have an emotional turn. Now, if I'm being honest, this is an adult in my opinion, bar swearing. So I think I had heard Holly Jackson say this, which is probably why it's kind of a little bit in my head. But I think she wanted to write an adult thriller so she could swear. But to a point, the swearing, in my opinion, wasn't fully necessary. It was not, it was just not, how do I explain it? It was not in context all the time. It was just too much. Like, everybody swears, but it just almost was like they were trying to swear too much for the sake of making this an adult book. That being said, Holly Jackson does write a good YA thriller, and I'm not going to take that away from her. I would have called this YA if you'd removed it, but I would still have enjoyed it nonetheless. So yeah, I would strongly recommend it is what I'm bringing out of this, and it was a nice, like, quick and easy read. The tears immediately puts it in the 4 stars, because yeah, I didn't expect to cry and I didn't expect the emotion, so thanks for that, Holly. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Last audiobook now, and I'm going to talk to you about Fireworks by Bonnie Woods. So I rated this 4 stars. Now this is book 2 in, I think it's called the Scottish Spice series. Book 1 is Kindling. Now I listened to Kindling in October as an autumnal read and I loved it, and I wanted to pick up the next one. I didn't have time at the end of October, so I picked it up in November instead. I didn't really know what audiobooks I wanted to listen to, so this was the perfect way to do it. This is book 2, so it follows, I want to call her Eiley and Warren. Warren is a firefighter who has recently moved back to the area, and she spots him and ogles him basically, and it's enemies to lovers kind of style. I enjoyed the premise of this book. When I looked on Goodreads, the ratings were actually pretty bad, and it's a cheesy little romance that is just a nice little autumnal read, to be honest. It was a nice little like palate cleanser for me, especially with some of the dark topics I've been reading in November. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I think that was the last in the series. I think it was a duology. But yeah, I would recommend both of those books. They were quick, easy, some a bit lighthearted. Yes, there's spice, but it wasn't overdone that you were a bit like cringe. But yeah, overall, I seem to have gone the other way to most people, which I do like to do most of the time. Guys, we're almost there, 2 more to go. So one of the books I picked up out of the library in November is The Examiner by Janice Hallett, and I actually ended up rating this 4 stars. So I read The Appeal, I think September time, as part of my library series, and I didn't rate that too much. This was very different, so I actually soft DNF'd this, but for a different reason. It wasn't that I wasn't enjoying it. I mean, yes, they're a lot slower paced than I'm used to, but the reason that I actually soft DNF this is because then I was due to go out a few days. I had an author event in November. I didn't want to carry this in my backpack. It's too chunky. And I knew I'd be getting more books for the author event. But then I picked this back up once I'd finished the rest of my reads, just to wrap up the month nicely, really. And I inhaled it. I read like 240 pages in one sitting. And this took a sinister turn I did not expect. So this follows basically 6 students who were on like I think it's a master's to do with like some arty. And basically we get their full, it's all mixed media is this book, and you get their full insight into a project. Now, things are happening, there are some suspicions, and there are some massive, like, not twists, but shocks that get dropped, which I really enjoyed. They kept getting dropped little and often, and the ending around the examiner themselves, wow. This was slow to start, but boy did it pick up, and yeah, it's made me want to potentially try a bit more Janice Hallett, so maybe I do need to give it a go. Guys, we're there. We're on to the last book. So the last book I want to talk to you about is A Gift for Dying by MJ Arledge. Now, eagle-eyed viewers amongst you, yes, this was on my December TBR. So firstly, let's get the rating out there. I rated it 4 stars. I actually finished this to the wire. So I picked this up the last week of November, and basically I put up 3 books in my Patreon, and this was what was chosen. It isn't actually a Christmas book, so I'm not sad about it. So this follows Cassie, who basically can look directly into people's eyes and see how they're going to die, when they're going to die. And yeah, so she looks into somebody's eyes and is extremely panicked to see that they are brutally murdered, and she tries to stop it. Unfortunately, she doesn't. This keeps happening, and Adam gets involved to help her try and either see how true this is, because obviously she could be having a mental breakdown, and also to help her deal with her visions. This was gripping. I actually ended up reading 345 pages of this in one sitting. Well, one day, not one sitting, that's a lie. But yeah, it's something else. May I mention as well, Cassie is only 15. So it's a lot for a little girl to take on, and what shocked me the most about this is that I actually started crying towards the end. So it was literally the last 3 words. I'm not going to say what they are because it ruins the book, but it was emotional towards the end anyway. It was sad what had happened and the outcome of the story, but then at the same time I was like, do you know what, it's quite a fitting end. But then it was the last few words and the epilogue that just got me, and I just sat there and had a little cry, and I don't know why. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. But yeah, I did end up really enjoying this, and because it wasn't remotely Christmas based, I'm kind of glad it wasn't on my December TBR, and it's one less for me to pick up. But yeah, that's the last book of November, and it was a good way to finish the month, really. Guys, that is a wrap on my November reads. Let me know in the comments, what book did you read in December? It's not December, but it is now. What books did you read in November? What was your favourite book of the month? What was your least favourite, if you want to tell me? And have you read any of these books? Are your ratings the same? You know, feel free to contradict my ratings, because I've seen a lot of that, and I actually quite like the discussion, as long as, you know, we're open, honest and fair to listen to other people's opinions. Some of these books people might enjoy because it's their cup of tea compared to mine. But yeah, that's a wrap, guys. Thank you for joining me on another video. And if you've stuck out to the end, hit that subscribe button, and I'll be back for another video very, very soon.